All right. Okay, so the program tonight is Reducing Confusion on Packaging and Foodware. I'm Karin Sieg, the Executive Director of Recycling Connections. And so I'm glad folks are listening at the time and maybe listening later on. And so this is the idea that we're going to try and answer and address some of the questions that common folks have about packaging. I do want to emphasize that the presentation is to reduce confusion, but it unfortunately will not eliminate it. There are many things that are just, constantly changing. Technology, science keeps changing, and so we, are always learning and always trying to, deal with all the things that we have and come up with in our. Moved ahead at once, that we have in our society. Some of the words, though, that I'm going to go over through the presentation that maybe you've seen or heard: sustainable, biodegradable, bio-based, reusable, renewable, PFAS, recyclable, number 7 PLAs, compostable, bioplastics. Again, these are just ones that are always around, and I'm thinking that these are some of the terms or words that people are confused about and want to know more about, and why us want to listen to the presentation. Well, first of all, why do any of us or we even care about this? And now, granted, I've only got a few people here, but I'm going to give you some options, and in the chat, I would like you still to give if you can, what reasonings you might be here for this presentation, or what would make you even really care about all this. A, I'm just confused about a lot of things, so I always want to learn. B, environmental stewardship. C, human health and safety. D, items B and C. And E, all of the above. So I'll let you just see if you, or type something else in if there's anything else, but see if any of these are applicable to you. And Susan, you can just let me know what people share. Are we seeing anything, Susan, or?
I was muted, so yes, E, and E for both. And we also have Sabrina that had added for inspiration of projects in my high school classroom. I'm also going to add C for myself as the primary, but of course I am all of the above.
Okay.
But I'm really more increasingly interested in the human health and safety of these products.
And so good. It's good to know the perspectives of what people are here for. The one thing as far as environmental stewardship that many people think of is, oh, I just don't want all this packaging to go to the landfill. And I thought it would be good to have a better understanding of what modern sanitary municipal solid waste landfills are like, how they're designed and construction, engineered, operated, etc. And so for those that maybe not as familiar with this, they are highly engineered. They have basically they're entombing our waste. So we want to protect the groundwater. So there's geocomposite liners and clay and a variety of soils. And then they put in leachate extraction systems. So we want to protect our groundwater. We also want to protect the surrounding just soils. And landfills then also are designed to then eventually protect the air above and the surface waters, etc. So basically that they put this all liner system on the bottom. The leachate, the rainwater that goes through all our garbage, is collected and taken off and then taken to a wastewater treatment facility to be managed, I say, and treated there. And then when a landfill is closed, they will put a tops, actually throughout the day on an operational level, daily cover goes over the layers of garbage along the way. And then they also will install gas extraction systems to let some of the gases that do build up in there out. But one of the gases that we're most concerned about with landfills is methane. And even though we're entombing entombing our garbage, methane, there is some degradation, not much, but methane is generated in the landfill. And methane, if you're not familiar with that as much, it's considered a greenhouse gas. It is 10 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And so there are ways to manage and deal with that methane so that it's not being released to the atmosphere and the air above. So some landfills will have a flare to burn it. Some, if at certain points of the landfill, they can, and when maybe there's a lot of methane generated, they will have maybe capture that methane and to use it for energy. But the span of a landfill, the life, there isn't much generated at the beginning, and then at the end of the landfill, there's not much methane generated relative either. So that opportunity to collect and financially and to logistically collect that methane is just at this one sort of stage of the landfill. So either way, for energy, I should say, but either way, the methane does need to be managed and dealt with through that process. So I just want, again, mainly I want people to know that landfills are designed to, as much as possible, to be protecting our environment and the surrounding area. And they have, again, they're basically zip-locking our garbage, and as maybe an analogy that will help people understand that not much happens to the landfill, within the landfill. And we, at the same time, this is the place for our garbage to go. It is designed to handle and manage or deal with our garbage rather than littering or backyard disposal, let's say. So I really do want people to feel like okay about sending our garbage to landfills, but obviously we don't want them to fill up any faster than they need to, and we want to be careful about what kind of items we do send to the landfill in the first place. One of the other issues that people are concerned about is the health and human safety. Something that is more on the hotbed here of issues lately is PFAS that you may have been hearing about. These are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. I can't always pronounce that very well. And because this has been more in the news, I chose to address this one a little bit sooner than the other items. PFAS are a large group of human-made chemicals, and they have been used in the industry and consumer products worldwide and for a long time, in the US since the 1940s. So this is nothing really new, but they are used to help products that we as consumers like to have that, well, we want things that are grease resistant, heat resistant, water resistant, and even resistant to biodegradation that will be helpful for that product. So examples they've been used in textiles, cleaners, leather, paper, firefighting foam, insulation, carpeting, cookware, clothing, footwear. So if anytime you have something that is like water repellent or heat resistant type of thing, certain cookware, that a good chance that has PFAS. The thing though, that because these have been used since the 1940s, they're already found in our water, soils, foods, wildlife, homes, and in our our bodies. And so there is obviously a reason to be concerned, but at the same time, we're also learning more about it, and there is a need to be informed, concerned, but not panicked. And some of the media stories these days lately have been very inflammatory in some ways. And so wanting people to know that this is a concern, but we are also learning more in the science of it, this, and how to deal and manage and or reduce the use of these PFAS materials. One thing that I think was interesting is I here shared that, I don't know, when we, styrofoam was concerned years ago, and so when the next slide here, the chlorofluorocarbons, basically well, oops, I'm sorry, I went back to, I'm sorry, the styrofoams, that those were maybe replaced with some paper covered, PFAS covered food papers for some of our like to-go foods, etc. So this is maybe sometimes we unintended consequences. Okay, other concerning chemicals that may be involved with packaging are bisphenol or BPAs. This is another industrial chemical. It's been used to make certain polycarbonate plastics or epoxy resins since the 1960s. And it had been used a lot for for storing foods, like a container that you purchase the food in, and they're the beverages. Also to coat the inside of metal products like food cans. And this has numerous health concerns. And so now you are tending to see where some products are advertised as BPA free. And so again, with consumers' interest and concern and demands, though, that's been shifting. One thing that was around in the years ago that was the hot concern was the chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. They're manufactured chemicals, again, used in the foam food packaging, like styrofoam refrigerators. And well, it's been banned since 1996 for environmental and health concerns. There still may be some products like older refrigerators that still might have some of this in there. So I still just wanted to allude to that this is still something that is people hear about CFCs and are concerned about. Okay, at this point, I'm going to just take a quick pause and see if anybody, we had someone else join, and see though if anyone has any questions, comments about the environmental and or the health impacts dealing or surrounding packaging. And so you can type something in and share that and Susan will share that.
Yep, Jennifer Somro has shared a link as well to PFAS if you want to learn a little bit more about that. It's a DNR link to give a little bit more information. Welcome, Jamie. We're glad that you're here today. And that is all that we have. We have no other questions at this time, Karin.
Okay. Well, and I'll thank Jennifer Somro she actually works with the Wisconsin DNR and is dealing a lot with PFAS. So I thank you, Jennifer, for sharing that link, and that would be included now in the presentation. Okay, oops. All right, so moving to more specific packaging terms, the word sustainable is thrown around a lot, and so that makes sense that we would be wanting some sustainable packaging. There is an actual sustainable packaging coalition. It is made up of a lot of larger companies, many, let's say, Fortune 500 type companies, that the goal of this coalition is to provide education and programming and action, et cetera, on larger scales. They came up with some sort of goals or objectives for what could be determined as sustainable packaging. And I've kind of paraphrased some of them here. And I do agree in theory what these are. That sustainable packaging would be sourced or manufactured, transported, and recycled using renewable energy. And that it would optimize the use of renewable or recycled content materials to even create the packaging, that it could be effectively recovered and utilized in like closed loop cycles. So meaning it was going to be recycled or composted, but somehow we would recover, gather those materials, and then again, they could be reused. And then that the materials were made of non-toxic items, and so that way they would be healthy throughout their life cycles. And obviously, since it's a packaging kind of item, that they would meet market criteria for both performance and cost. And a little later in the presentation, we'll be learning about one of the programs that this coalition has developed, and is probably one that you've commonly seen. The word reusable, the whole idea of reusing is actually my favorite idea to really, I think, as far as environmental and even then maybe, health reasons. Reusable is the ability to be used again more than once. It's, and yet sometimes people will say I'm, recycling something when it's really reusing. It obviously will reduce waste and utilize resources the best and most effectively. Then one thing though with reusable, you do have the logistics of, if it's on a larger scale, the transportation, cleaning and sanitation of the items, but it's not insurmountable. And I'm showing a few resources here on the individual level. I really enjoy following Alex Eves. If you go to his website, here it's stayvocal.com. He's a professional reuser. I'm showing a photo of some of the t-shirts that he sells. And these are t-shirts that were, I know this is not packaging related, but I do want to still share this. T-shirts that were like misprints or all kinds of things. And then he prints over them his message of reuse because you can't recycle the planet. And so sharing that. There also are some agencies or larger, organizations that on a more industrial level, the Reusable Industrial Packaging Association or Reusable Packaging Association. So just showing those as for context as well. One thing that consumers might be interested in is the ability to, on a larger scale, purchase your common products that you've maybe bought before, but that they are in reusable containers. And this, theloopstore.com is where, again, these, let's say here's Haagen-Dazs ice cream, but it's in a container. You buy it through Loop Store, and then when you're done, you return it back. And so, again, maybe many common products, Nivea, so you can see that there's different common companies or products that you could purchase from here. There is also here beverages, condiments, snacks, baking, desserts. There's all types of things that you can purchase. So I'd encourage maybe to look into that as another option to have reusable packaging for both food and personal care products. And reusing, I have a photo here of my reusable foodware kit. And so I have a reusable cloth napkin, my bamboo foodware or silverware, if you want to call it, a reusable straw, steel straw. I made a little casing for it out of some bias tape and just sewed the edge. I have a container that I bring when I think I might have food to go, leftovers. So, and then I just purchased this BPA-free sort of like Ziploc bag, and I can get it all to fit in my little reusable bag here and pull that drawstring, and then I really can avoid getting a lot of packaging and or items that I really don't want. Another thing that for ideas of what to do with maybe some of the packaging you have or the products or things that you're not quite sure what to do with for reuse, I look up things on Pinterest, and I just can't believe that people thought of some really cool idea. And it's like, oh my gosh. So that's another way to just find some unique ways to deal with some of the packaging or items that you acquire in your life. And again, I know this is packaging more so related, but at the same time, with reuse, I really want people to consider all kinds of ways of purchasing reused goods, going to thrift stores and resale shops and Goodwill and donating and or contributing to them and keeping that circle going. I'm also amazed on how you can find pretty much any and everything online through maybe social media, Facebook things. Again, this is my little plug for reusing as much as you can in your daily life. Here's an infographic that gives another perspective of how important reusing, let's say, a reusable water bottle and coffee mug or cup would be, and how much that you could save and reducing the amount of packaging you even generate. And so this to me is, again, really important to realize or to do something positive and not be generating so much packaging or that are some concern in the first place. The image here in the background is of the Marathon County landfill, which is located in central Wisconsin, if you're not familiar where Marathon County is. And this just shows you that what the daily garbage coming in looks like when it's getting unloaded. And if you ever have a chance to take a tour of a landfill, I would encourage you to take that opportunity. So, but again, using reusable containers is really going to be helpful. The next term, biodegradable, is one that also is out there a lot. And it's basically the definition is capable of being decomposed by bacteria or other living organisms into its natural elements. In the bottom right of the screen, you'll see some symbols that are usually imply or designating that that product is biodegradable. The Biodegradable Products Institute, BPI, is really the clearinghouse for determining whether the phrase, it's sort of the authority on determining whether or not packaging or an item is truly biodegradable. So if you want to really tout that, you would get your product or your things approved through the BPI. And so that is something that is just to be aware of that organization to verify those things. Biodegradable products overall break down much faster than other types of products. They're typically made from sustainable materials, plant byproducts such as cornstarch or sugar cane. And yeah, while they do break down faster, at the same time, note that they do require energy or other inputs to grow those plants to make the products. And it is possible that that process includes herbicides or pesticides. So just keeping that again in context. And unfortunately, most often then, despite this claim or that they're going to biodegradable, they still will be thrown in the trash that goes to our landfills. And as I just learned a little bit ago, modern landfills are not really conducive to full decomposition. So if you get something that is like biodegradable, one way you can feel good that it is not a chemical-based thing, it was sustainable materials, but understanding that it is most likely going to go to the landfill and it doesn't really degrade at that kind of location. Compostable is another one that gets confused. People are confused about, well, what does that mean? Or, oh, it can be composted, it's compostable. And the product, the definition is a product that breaks down into its natural elements, but really only in a compost setting. And this phrase, this determination, is it compostable, is in our country determined by the U.S. Composting Council. So to be able to tout that packaging or something is truly compostable, usually entities go through this U.S. Composting Council. Compostable materials are also made from plants or other organic materials. Again, the cornstarch. But there is also the PLA plastic. It's a natural polymer made from polylactic acid molecules. And so we're going to learn more about that in a minute. But these are some of the things that are used to make compostable products. They do have another, though, advantage because of the way they're designed or made, that over other biodegradable options, is that they would break down much faster, again, in this compost setting, mainly many in roughly about 90 days. And then if they're going to be turned into this finished product, the compost, then that is a nutrient-rich product, which is good for our planet as far as, good soils, and can be used in other ways. So if the materials get to a compost site, then they will break down much faster. Here are some different labels that you might see on some of the packaging. And in the upper left, you'll see compostable, but it's also has the BPI's kind of stamp there, and the U.S. Composting Council. The one on the upper right, I like this one because it says check locally, as these do not exist in many communities, the industrial facilities. And it points out that it is not suitable for backyard composting. And so this really, to me, is more informative for your average consumer of like, oh, okay. The bottom left, the number 7 and the recycling symbol and PLA, this is one that some entities will say, well, this type of container is compostable. And again, we'll cover that here a little bit more. And the other bottom right is more of an international one symbol, but these are some that you might see, again, on some of the packaging that you might have. But with composting, again, I want to emphasize, you need to know where or how it will be composted. If it's the thing that's in your hand, that cup, if it's going to go to a program that will send these materials collected to an industrial facility or site, then it's truly going to get composted. If you put it in your backyard system, maybe not. And you need to, though, maintain your backyard system at a level that maybe is hot enough and very active kind of program or system to be able to break that down. I personally am kind of a cool method composter, or not super attentive to mine. And I try some of these things in my compost system, and yes, they take them a while to break down. So really, the cups and things and materials that you have, if you want to assure that they're going to be composted, you need to know that they're going to go to an industrial facility or site. But unfortunately, you don't always know that, and you can't always assume. And so to assure that, again, you need to verify what these places or facilities will take and what they won't take, because there are a lot of different things depending on the kind of finished product that they're going to be making, the finished compost. And then you need to know, how will your materials actually get there? And this kind of slide is more maybe for like event planners or businesses, larger collections that you are concerned about. Oh, we're going to get this kind of container, foodware items, and we want it to be composted, but we need to find out who's going to take it, how's it going to get there, and verify what that site will or will not accept. And so here's where I'm not going to eliminate the confusion, I may only add to it. Biodegradable versus compostable. And here found 3 laws of bioplastics. Something could be bio-based, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily biodegradable. And if it's biodegradable, it does not necessarily mean it's equal to being compostable. And generally, you could trust BPI's compostable labels and or that number 7 PLA symbol as being acceptable for composting. But even recently, I've learned that, for example, BPI is changing some of its statements about whether a certain product is BPI approved based on some of like the PFAS concerns. So again, things change. And so keeping informed about what is the current situation is important. The phrase biodegradable is really a term that's used for underperforming, let's say, plastics that don't meet the compostable standards. And to be labeled compostable, it has strict requirements for how it degrades, how long that takes, and if it's toxic after the decomposition. And the phrase biodegradable doesn't have those restrictions. Here is a diagram to give some more perspective on this, the confusing little comments they just made on the previous slide. So biodegradable, it may or may not be up at the top, bio-based, it may be fossil-based. And so you can see where this, we have a really wide variety of products and materials that we use in our packaging, and so things get kind of confusing there. So with that, whoops, I'm gonna leave that slide up, and since I've kind of introduced and confused maybe the whole biodegradable and compostable, I'm gonna see if there's any comments or questions that maybe I can help with at this time. And so I'm gonna just kind of give a few minutes, and Susan, you can let me know what you might see or hear.
Sure, if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. I'm still monitoring that. In the meantime, I'm just going to share a little bit of a story. I work as a board member for the local Audubon chapter, and they really were, they feel it's important that they have compostable cups for their events. And I watch at the end of our meetings, and I go and I pick all of those things out of the recycle bin, and I put them in the trash can. And I tried to explain to them that, you know, we're sort of, I know they want to put that environmental aspect on there, but I'm very conflicted with the fact that I know it all goes to the landfill anyway, and it really won't break down anyway. So why are we wasting our money on that? I mean, I know we have conversations in the office sometimes, but I don't know if your thoughts, you know, would you just go with kind of the conventional if you're trying to save money anyway, in a sense, or do you say it all depends really on the situation and how those perspectives are shared and improved, or something like that?
Well, and this is a little bit of what I'll kind of wrap up with, but in this particular case of the biodegradable or compostable, again, I see the point that if nothing else, the materials, hopefully, most likely, you know, this diagram here may, again, not really be the best one, but the idea that they were, you know, bio-based, they were made from natural materials, they're not human-made or fossil-based. And so there is that idea that how it was even produced can have some benefits, and knowing though, on the disposal end, it's still going to go to a landfill. This is where it's, again, back to you're being aware, if nothing else. That's I like the, you know, that we know some of the complications and issues with these kinds of packaging, but that it's still complicated. And so, you know, Susan, you're sharing, that you just definitely those compostable things do not go in recycling. They go into the trash or to some place that's going to actually compost them. And that is a good point that you brought up, is that they are not to go in any recycling program. Did anyone else share anything?
Nope, not at this time. So we'll let you continue on. If you want to share anything, folks,
sure.
Just go ahead, and I'll keep monitoring the chat. Back to you.
Thanks. Okay, so good segue to recyclable. And recycling is, the definition for this is a series of activities which the material has reached the end of its current use, and it's processed into materials to be made into the production of new products. And so it is actually kind of changing its shape and form, in a sense, that it's used one way and now it's going to be processed and made again into something different. The materials kind of go to another level, and then they're reformed and made into something else. And for wanting to share some resources here on the Wisconsin side, recyclemorewisconsin.org is a great resource to learn more about what is recyclable in general, recycling questions that you might have about the process, and what are maybe banned and required to be recycled in Wisconsin. I also want to share about Associated Recyclers of Wisconsin. They are the actual hosts, let's say, of the Recycle More Wisconsin program. And so these are ways, entities that you can learn more about recycling in Wisconsin and understand those a little bit better. Oops, come on, trying to move my slide along here. Technical difficulty, oh, there. Okay, my button was not working. Okay, so labeling for recycling. In the upper left corner here of this slide, how to recycle. This is a project of the Sustainable Packaging Coalition that I mentioned earlier. And it's again, it requires a membership to use these labels. So it's not like anybody can be just slapping these on some product that they've made and now, distributing. So just kind of want to emphasize that. But I do like these, and I see them more and more on things that I purchase, that they give instructions on that the product you've bought maybe has a variety of different levels. And so the bottom left is a good example. The outer paper box is going to be recyclable. The plastic wrap that's around maybe again, there's a tray inside the plastic wrap around it with a line through that means no, it's not recyclable. And if then there's a tray, it gives even more instructions about rinse before recycling and check locally, that pointing out that not all recycling programs are the same in every community. And so it gives you some guidelines to kind of assess, whether or not some of this is possibly recyclable or not. So I've been really liking those kind of labeling. The chart on the right this is one of the things that we get a lot of questions about with Recycling Connections and our outreach. And the numbers inside the chasing arrow recycling symbol, those numbers designate the plastic resin code, the type of resin that container or item, whatever it is made from. And it was originally, those number systems were originally designed to help inform recyclers to what thing that might be in their hand, and they're trying to sort it, what kind of resin it was made from. And so that they would know whether, they can put it over here, over there, and, keeping similar types of resins together. Unfortunately, over time, many people just see that symbol and just immediately assume, oh, this means it can be recycled. And it's like, no, that is not the intention. Here on this chart, that you can see what some of the other symbols or names, the acronyms for some of these plastics resins are, and what some of the original uses are for the container, and then what some uses are after it's been collected and then recycled, and then it's made into new things. So for example, the plastic number ones, the polyethylene terephthalate or PET bottles are commonly used for soft drink bottles, mouthwash bottles, water bottles. And then when they're collected and recycled, they are made into maybe industrial strapping, automated bumpers. They're made into clothing. This chart is not, all-inclusive. So, but a variety of things. And so at the same time, this is where I do want to emphasize the benefit, though, of recycling is that it is being collected and has the possibility of being recycled into a new product. But it's very important, though, to make sure that you know what your local program is accepting and not accepting, and then how it's accepting it as well. Do you need to do some kind of added preparation? Do you take any caps off, or maybe not? Or pretty much, though, all programs want you to rinse and not have food products still in the containers, and to really make sure, though, that you are putting in only what items are actually acceptable and can be recycled. Recent, well, not news in the last maybe couple of years or so were about how recycling has changed a lot. And in the past, we all were guilty of what we call now wish cycling, where we think something might be recyclable and or we really want it to be recyclable. So we just, okay, I'm just gonna put it in the container, into my bin, and they take it and it's magically gone and I feel better. But unfortunately, on the other end, at the recycler's end, that those things, if they do not have a market for them, and or if they're gross and contaminated, they are not recyclable. And so they just become garbage, and you've just used more energy to collect and transport and then still have that stuff go to the landfill. So our saying is, when in doubt, throw it out. We would rather have recycling be a positive thing, an effective thing, and to not be dealing with all that garbage. So check with your local program. I really encourage you to go to your local municipality, and your hauler sometimes isn't always the best option for information, because some haulers are large national corporations that they may design information that's just pretty generic and does not always reflect the subtleties of your local program. So find that information locally and pay attention. Make sure that you stay updated on it, because sometimes, again, systems or processes change. So find that information and really do your best to recycle right. So, in getting near the end here, I encourage people to make decisions to make a difference. And this is where the trying to deal with the conflicting information that we maybe just listened to here. You know, on a personal level, I would encourage everybody to reduce the amount of packaging you purchase in the first place. And what this could look like and what this could mean is that you, for example, purchase in the food category, local foods that are locally produced, don't have the packaging around them. You are saving energy for the production of that food because it's just made locally. And you might also, trying to think of some other thing. Okay, never mind. I'm sorry. Reuse items as much as and packaging as possible. Because I was going to say, buying in bulk, and then you can reuse your containers to get that food or those materials, so you don't have to always have new packaging each time. And then after you've tried to reduce as much packaging and remember, you're purchasing that packaging and you've already taken ownership of it. So you need to make sure that you manage it at the end properly. So then hopefully maybe you can recycle or compost it next, but you need to make sure you know of your local programs or services that may or may not take that. So again, you bought that packaging, please manage it properly, don't litter it, and reuse it if you can, and recycle and compost if possible. For businesses or organizations, as Susan was sharing earlier about the Audubon and the composting cups, before purchasing or using certain packaging foodware items, I really encourage you to know and understand on the local level what local facilities can actually take these items. Help educate your customers or the people that are attending in your event about those options, and work and help to assure that your items will get there. So that is something that, again, in a business or let's say organizational level, that you take some kind of ownership of understanding this whole process and the issues. If you are a large, let's say, corporation and you're going to be distributing some product large scale, educating the customers, again, is still important about what that packaging is made of and how to responsibly manage the materials after the use, as the example of the how to recycle kind of messaging. But in general, at least I hope this program has helped you understand the issues related to the decisions you make, even if they don't result in perfect solutions. I think it's important for us to be aware and understand how things can constantly be changing. And we as consumers are really driving a lot of the products and the packaging that purchase. And so if we are trying to make a difference and communicate our concerns, that eventually the industries and the businesses and that will be listening. So with that, I thank you. If you like what you saw or heard, you can always help support us through your donations. You can also learn more about us on our website, recyclingconnections.org. And we are a nonprofit organization, a 501c3. You also can check out our Facebook page with facebook.com/recyclingconnections. Follow us and like us on there. If you have questions in the future, you can email me or call on the phone there. And I also want to give a plug. This presentation is part of a series that Recycling Connections is been offering the last year or two. And we've had one previous on raising backyard hens and composting. Next coming up, we have a presentation of her staff member, Kelly Adlington, about recycling and solid waste in Portage County, Wisconsin, where we're located. And that's coming up next week on June 3rd at 6 p.m. Versus the 6:30 tonight. So with that, again, I thank you. And if there's any other comments or questions, I'm willing to hang on. And I am going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see folks.
Anyone have questions? Thanks, Karin. That was really great. I enjoyed. I always learn something new every single time too. This recording will be posted on our website, and if you needed the presentation, would like the presentation, we can send that out to you as well. Sabrina, you working with some high school students, if that information is helpful for you, we can share that, make that available.
And Dave, I see, did you have your, say, hand up? Are you?
I think he's clapping.
Pardon?
He was applauding you.
Oh, that's what that is. All right. I'm not familiar with some of these. Okay.
This is Jennifer. Karin, I think you did a really great job, and thanks for the presentation. I know you got into the labeling issues with, compostable and biodegradable and the like, and the misnomer that the resin identification code on plastic bottles means that they're all recyclable. Another labeling conundrum that I find is on food packaging, where you have, the use of the terms sell by, use by, EXP, best if used by, Best Buy, all of these terms. And I guess just, a comment, that these are not regulated terms by the state of Wisconsin or, FDA or a federal agency. They are used at the discretion of the food manufacturers. So it doesn't mean that the food is bad, after a particular date. It's really the manufacturer's perception of its highest quality, for the product that they're selling, but it doesn't mean, again, that it's not safe or that necessarily after those dates. And, you know, to be honest, manufacturers are motivated to have us buy more of their products, so they may shortchange that date, you know, to put it a little bit less than what may be the case. So, you know, I'm old-fashioned. I, you know, smell test if it's yogurt or, you know, just whatever. I just wanted to throw it out there to the group that, you know, those dates are not, or those terms are not, you know, regulated by an entity. And again, just sort of
Right.
going with the reuse or reduce theme, you know, reducing food waste to me is really important, and understanding that those dates and terms, you know, what they mean or don't mean.
Right. Actually, I've given a presentation on that whole topic, so that could be another one that down the line could do as well, because that is a worthy of a whole nother presentation. But thank you for pointing that out, that is something that is on the labeling, on our packaging, and is communicating something, and it's often confusing and not really always that helpful.